where I'd rather go. I seldom know.
I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, we're going to review an album from an artist that Tom and I are excited about. We've been excited about for a few years now, since his debut album came out in 2010. The artist is Ghostpoet, who is a British hip-hop artist. And his first album, which we reviewed in 2010, Peanut Butter Blues and Melancholy Jam, a terrible album title. But
it's certainly a mouthful.
But very promising debut.
Yes.
And now we have his new album, Some Say I, So I Say Like. Now, Ghostpoet, as I was saying, we reviewed this in 2010, pretty early on in our music reviewing career. And Tom and I, this is one of our first true disagreements as music reviewers. And one of the cool things that we get to do at Velocities in Music is, since there's two of us, Tom and I, while very similar, I've listened to a lot of the same music as we, have grown up together and been friends for a long time. Eventually, we do disagree, though, and Ghostpoet's first album was definitely when that happened. Now, Tom, it's very important to us that we, since Ghostpoet is kind of a lesser-known artist, it's very important that we kind of communicate what style he's really putting across, how he crafts his songs, and then we'll go into Some Say I, So I Say Like.
Okay, so starting with his debut.
Yeah.
Now, that album, I really liked it. I was on the upper end of that. Jake didn't like it quite so much. And I listened back to it also before we started listening to Some Say I, So I Say Like, preparing for this review. And really, he's got that very traditional kind of British drawl in his rapping style.
You can definitely tell he's British.
Yeah, that is
he's
true.
He's from across the pond.
That is true. And I get a lot of tricky vibe from him. Not only in his vocals, but also in this kind of like these electronic kind of trip-hop style beats. Now, there was a lot more of that on his debut, and that was kind of an interesting thing comparing these two albums, because when I listened back to his debut, I realized that the production style was very cool, very forward-looking, but it was really his vocals that pulled me in, because it was very much hook-based. There were a lot of choruses that really pulled me in, but still just the presentation and the attitude of the whole thing I really liked. Now, I don't think that this one had the same instant appeal, but I ended up liking it even more.
Did you really?
I did, cool. Simply because it was a grower. There was a lot to dig at here from every single aspect of the music. Not only in the vocals, the presentation of the vocals, the lyrics jumped out at me a lot more. There's some great lyrics on here, but also he mixes up the sound so much more. You got the drumming in there, a lot of great guitar lines, even some horns, but it's all produced very sharply. Now, I actually read a quote of Ghostpoet's where he said that, he realizes the production style is kind of clean, but he actually views the album as being kind of dirty and gritty. He said that he sees it as something like it was polished and then it was thrown down a ravine or something like that. And I think that's a really cool approach, because what it does is it gives Ghostpoet the opportunity to come up with music that is very clean, very nice, and then find places where he can dirty it up a bit, bring some humanity and some intrigue to it. At least that's the way I listen to it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, to me, I kind of had the exact opposite reaction with Some Say I, So I Say Like that I did to Peanut Butter Blues.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the reason is because I naturally did not favor his more hook-based vocal presentation on his first album. And now this album, I'm seeing a lot more of Ghostpoet relying on the actual instrumentation and beat bass to provide that foundation for him to do everything else. It's crazy how we're interpreting these albums, because it's completely backwards from how we normally interpret music, because I'm always focused more on the vocals, or that's my gateway to the whole emotional appeal, and Tom's is through the emotional appeal. It all comes from the instrumentation. For Ghostpoet, it seems to be flipped for us for whatever reason. I felt like his beats on this album were key, and they were the paramount thing to setting up these tracks and making these tracks really catchy. The second is just all the synths that he used. This guy has an ear for just making these really dark, creepy moods, and then mixing those in with interesting other instruments like horns. I'm sure there's French horns, some sax. I got a lot of auxiliary percussion percussion throughout this album, and that was something that I really appreciated. And plus, they added in some guitar in some tracks too. So,
but the key is it all sounds natural, and it doesn't get stale because he mixes up the sound palette throughout the album. Even the songs that have the real sounding drums and the guitars, they don't sound the same because they're used completely differently. And that's what really grabbed me about this album. Is at first I was kind of like, like I said, the vocals didn't quite pull me in, but I knew that I loved the production, the presentation of the sounds. I mean, when I got to track 4, Plastic Bag Brain, and that guitar and drum line came in, I was like, what? Like, it knocked me off my feet. It really did. And it made me excited to listen to the rest of the album. And it was full of surprises like that through the whole thing. But then that's what really gripped me about it. But then once I got to know the album better, I did warm up to the vocals. And I actually found that a lot of them are just as catchy, but almost in a better way because you have to discover it.
That's right. And the reason why you have to discover it, or at least what I saw, what I thought was super crafty, and proved to me that he is looking at the big picture sound of his albums and not just the individual tracks. Where so many artists are so worried about that instant appeal of that one track, so it makes it onto another artist playlist or something, and they get big. Ghostpoet's not worried about that. He's crafting albums, and that's something I very much appreciate at a very high level, and it was very evident by the construction of his vocal parts. They were meant to complement the auxiliary percussion, the crazy beats. He built and constructed his vocal parts. He crafted them to be part of the sound. It's kind of like how Frank Lloyd Wright would build houses not at the top of the hill because it ruins the hill. He would build them into the side of the hill to kind of be a part of the hill.
That's a cool analogy.
That is exactly what Ghostpoet's doing as he's crafting his song, as he's writing his vocal parts. That shows an artistry that you don't see in music very often, especially in hip hop. You don't see that, and so it was really exciting for me to hear that. And honestly, it just made it even more.
Another thing for me is I actually really liked his singing on here.
Yeah.
And not a lot of rappers can pull that off. Kanye West, great rapper. Can't sing worth crap. I hate any track where he tries to sing.
Kid Cudi should never sing again.
Yeah,
ever.
Exactly.
No more.
But Ghostpoet, I think, can pull off both sides. I think he's got a very unique style. I think he's got a really forward-looking approach to the arrangement, the production, the overall presentation of his sound, the way he executes it, everything. I mean, for me, this album was really a home run. I am very impressed with it.
Tom, what do you think you're going to give this one?
I'm going to give this one an 87.
Wow.
Yeah,
Tom
I really liked it.
So
I'm not done with it. I'm going to keep listening to it.
Great. That's awesome. One thing I found is that I really didn't like kind of the last 3 tracks. Now, the last track, Comatose, is very experimental. It's almost post-rock. It has this big build at the end.
The strings come in.
Yeah, kind of a cool way to end the album. And it took me a while to get into that. Now, I will say, as I got into like my 5th and 6th listen to this album, I really did start to appreciate the last 3 tracks a bit more, but I gotta say, the weight of this album for me was on the front, and I wish it was just a bit more balanced. That's just one slight complaint. I'm still going very high on this one. I'm going 84.
Cool.
So we're going, 86 overall on this one. This is a huge stamp of approval. Definitely a must-listen album from VIMTV. If you guys haven't heard of Ghostpoet, we would love for you to check this album out, and his debut for that matter, and let us know what you thought, because this is an up-and-coming artist that we're really excited about. Give us a comment at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, let us know what albums you're into from 2013, and tell your friends about VIMTV. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.
Saving up the pennies cause the city too gritty, and cooking french fries ain't pretty. Can someone show me the way?